transcendent knowledge. As I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks, great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness is no form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, guide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One rose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Shandara Samarayam Ve Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha Papa Gonjo Zonji Gae Dempe Doji She Oba Doji Meba Doji Shewa Doji Jagi Baji Metum Bejo Donje Shedin Koye Zoha Yerin Donja Jejo Shewa Don Medon Nube Jendan Jewa Don Don Ba Dunji Hun Son Zun Joji Nyashi De Jan Denda Ele Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. Imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love. Let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. ba ni na ni yo la yin zi yo ni ni ye la la me ro ye zi ma la za ye yu yi jar ba lu zo. I send forth this jeweled mouth, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radhamandalagam Niratayami Nanzo Ji Janam La Chanju Badu Dani Yazu Jin Dagi Chinye Ji Pesu Nam Ji Jola Benji Zanje Rubayo Yadan Ji Janam La Chanju Badu Dani Yazu Jin Dagi Chinye Ji Pesu Nam Ji Jola Benji Zanje Rubayo Jadan Ji Janam La Chanju Badu Dani Yazu Jin Dagi Chinye Ji Pesu Nam Ji Jola Benji Zanje Rubayo. The Parshin Shidun Ramasung. Yine Togon Kamala Jo.
Tanga to Lari Bote, Rajas or Shin Sudan, then the Lochadajan Baniji, then the Lochadajan Batala, Taitan and Hibbelamichu, and Hibbacheta Lamichu. Hibbacheta Lamichu, Taja Bichu, the Tumu Lodges of Lojam Sudan, did the Tumu Lodges of Lojam Chimbi Lodges of Lojam Susun Le, Tumu the Tumu Lodges of Lojam Tumu the Tumu Lodges of Lojam Sula. And then Sambajan went to somebody to tell her to Sawa. Sambajan went to the Jinishima to Loje Badan, Jinishima di Totemba. Jinishima di Totemba, the John to the lady and on it, down to Lende Katut Marbe.
Less so.
Niba Lende la Ichi, Niba Dele Taji saw a Bajivala Son, Lende Sambatan, Sheda to Sambasan, Judu Shatu. Shisamba tala muta ane susu shete samba marbe niroa
Lasso.
Tashi samba tala le gebitu le pejo le mayo de shete marbe ta dene susu shete samba tala
Okay. Okay.
susu shete samba le niroa le lan tu temba ta le dan de temba saje ni che le dan de temba tala sun nabi lende Kabilende and then Legend Temba Sonrova.
Less so.
Tangazu Nabil de Capulet Moro.
Less so.
Nabil and did Lamuan, Chiang Chabata Dagan Tembas.
Less so. Soon. Okay.
Muadala Nabil and Muadala Tatan and what the Devago Chutlet Marbe.
Less so.
And also there was Sujavala, Devamago Judele, Je Samba, Joa, Tataji, Jejugun Shed Marbe.
Less so.
Tatanga to Legile, Navasun Tsa, and the Nagi Tama, Chizu Sun San, Tanga Chica to Led Marbe, Machika to
Less so.
Machika to Led.
Okay, so again today we are looking at Lama Tsong-kha-pa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Again, looking at the outline, we find that it begins with how to rely upon the teacher that is the root of the path. And then the second category of the stages of how students train their minds after having relied upon the Lama. Under that category, we find two headings: an exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, and then how to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity. Under that second category, we find the actual way to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, under that category of how to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. And then we find three major headings: training the mind in the stage of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity, training the mind in the stage of the past shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. The first category, training the mind in the stage of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity, we find three categories. First, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity. Second, the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity. And then third, dispelling any misconceptions related to the person of small capacity. Under the first category, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, we find two major headings: developing the state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then a second category of relying on a method or a means of achieving happiness in one's next life. So that's the section that we're dealing with currently. So under that section that has relying on a method or a means of achieving happiness in one's next life, we find two major headings. First, refuge, and then karma and its results. So we're in the section on karma and its results. And that section is called Developing the Faith of Conviction in Karma and Its Results, parentheses, that is the root of all temporary happiness and certain goodness. So that's the major name of the section that we're dealing with. And then there are three categories that we deal with in that section. First, reflecting on karma and its effects in general. Second, reflecting on karma and effects in detail, or the particulars of karma and its effects. And then the third category of after one has reflected on karma and its effects in general, how one abandons non-virtue and engages in virtue. So that's the third category. The first category of reflecting on karma and its effects in general, we find two major headings under that: the actual way to reflect on karma and its effects in general, and reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma. So the actual way to reflect on karma and its effects in general has four categories. The first category is the certainty of karma. The second category is the magnification of karma. The third category is not experience the results of actions that you have not done. And then the fourth category is that the karma that you have committed does not perish, or the actions you have done do not perish. So that's the four categories under the actual way to reflect on karma and its effects in general. And then the second category, we find reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma. And in that section, we find two major categories. First, the principal teachings on the 10 paths of action, and then the determination of the effects of actions. So we've gone over the principal teaching, and now we're dealing with the determination of the effects of actions. And in that section, we find three categories: black actions and their effects, white actions and their effects, and a presentation of other classifications of karma. So under the first category, black actions and their effects, we find three major headings. First, the actual paths of black actions. Second, the distinctions of weight. And then the third category of an exposition of the results or of the effects. So now we're currently under the first heading, the actual path of black action, which begins with killing. And if we look at among the 10 non-virtuous actions, there have to be four aspects present in order for a complete path of action. So those four are as follows. We first have to have the basis. Second, there has to be attitude. Third, performance of the deed. And then fourth, the actual culmination or the completion. So this is what we're dealing with at this point. We've already gone through, when we look at the 10 non-virtuous deeds, we find 3 non-virtues of the body, 4 non-virtues of the speech, and 3 non-virtues of the mind. We've gone over the 3 non-virtues of the body: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And we've gone over the first 3 non-virtues of the speech. So now we're on the 4th non-virtue of the speech. Gossip. So we've gone through lying, divisive speech, offensive speech, the three, and now we're dealing with gossip, which I think is called senseless speech here. So that's the section that we're in. We're on page 223 now in the English, and 170 in the Tibetan, I think. Jadan, don't you?
Tibetan Jadan Dunjure.
Okay.
Inchikabandu, Inchikusutin.
Lapsar. Again, the English is on page 223.
What that Jun Tamachizu Nachi Timber Nachi. Tangachi Teleje, Samba Joa Tatu Jigundo.
Less so.
Nachi Git Chosana, Term about the Dembas, term about the Dembos. Tangachi Takashia, Tundasha, remember, and Nasumashi that you wrote to see some other Jeron Ratan, what the and what the
history.
Kijat, what the Moshi that you wrote. And then thank you to say that should be thank you to say some other should be thank you. And the shoot you choosing like you thank you, Sharu Sutu thank you, and then you be to Jen thank you. Shoot choosing thank you, and also much as Mother. Since in the chart now, shut the Travel Buddha and what the Kubasha, what the shoot choosing like you thank you, good no.
The Chupa, the Chad and Chad.
About to what the Ghana is done, Shati saying, charge of
okay.
What the
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
CJ saying what the chat and charge of the Chudis language. What to say is that should choosing a Jubi. Then Sharu Sudu thanks. That should be Sharu Khan Suyars. Sharu Khan Suji the Yomaro. Sharu Khan Sut the Lag, thank you, the Jimendo. And then you visit to Jim, thank you, Lungo the Nabu orders, what the Lag, thank you, in certain years, Mobusa. And then I used the Tubal and Rubal, Takan, thank you to so, thank you soon to go. Thank you, good on
9, go.
Soon the number Sanji, thank you, true the Nami, thank you, Maris. Thank you to the Sundun Desa. Thank you to the Tashiru, thank you, the Imber, Tato, true not Tawatan, Dungabu, thank you, Drubal, thank you, and then what the David, thank you, what the Sunday, Nambi, thank you, res. Then my thank you to so, Tundash, Shiraka, Martame, Tomato Tempers, what to say some other. Tomato, Luton, there. Tomato, Luton, Tomato, what to say the one. Thank you.
Then this sum, the Nampa, this sum, Donda Yemba, Donda Mepa.
Thank you, Goson, go. Son to Goson. To Dubalan Bass, to Tubalan, thank you, Tubalan, thank you, need the Shuru, thank you, Tuba Jamba, Tuba Jamba, thank you, New Orders. Ta Dubalan. Rubanya thank you the number is. And then you today Dongapons. You today thank you to Suta, should choosing a Jubi thank you to this much easier to the Dongapo thank you number thank you is. Then what then you talk on
the Jamang example lagu.
Yeah. That should be thank you to say that.
Lesser.
The Sultan Daka, Tanga to kiss at them of a shade as you roll.
Lesser.
What the legit what the Nachi jet or things. Tell me about the lesser. No,
lesser.
Nachi je. Tasamba de la Duché Tella Duchiness, Duchineta. Tell me about the being out of Handuk. Tell me about the temple to that Doshiba, Teshiba. Tell a Teshiba, then Doshiba, was
less so.
Sheba Tanle Masun Chanza. Then, Juba Dubiton, turn maybe Kesha Shiage and the Jundu to the Kuwaris.
Doba, Yuna, then Gla.
Turn that maybe Kesha Tagashi, Shiagan de Bajuro.
Lesser.
What the Duchess and Telco waters,
less so.
Kitchen turned up, maybe Kisha share on the Bajuro.
Less so.
What the
wish to
tell Duship was Matu Madu, turned out there, turn remember that they Kisha the Shia on the batteries. She somba le mason chan de ne Dieu de bitente Dieu bitente ni la ten de sheba ha ite sa ta gaja kar sheba to me be gaja ramano mo she ro
Less so.
o Dieu de bote sare de la koja yu mo ga che la koja yu go mares ane she sa ge yenda ji anyu no go ya de go mares 아주 다가지 수집이 지시에 대해서 나치 인지로다 고자 유유 말어 고자 유유 먹으면 싫어서
Less so.
저는 아주 신다지 어디 가면 도서나 어디 바지 신래지라고 말ပဲ그치 고 말보다 전에 녀모네 소부가로 다 차비용하게 그쳤다가 시대야 용그래 콘르용하게 그쳤다가 시대야 용그래 안에 뜨문하게 그쳤다가 시대야 용그래 소소 말ပဲ
Less so.
소부가로사 콜로네 만데비 쇼제 파운드 뭐 콜론사데 느끼쳐도 하면 봐 시야도 버트레스
Less so.
쇼제도 마운드 보고사 안에 조안에 나제바 마와 송바고스 나제바 전다면 그것이야 안에 고통바
Less so.
내가 어디 나게 그것이야 송바든지라 조아스 그래서 말봐
Less so.
어떻게 주잖아
Okay. Tatu Lagua.
타투 때서 뭐요 타투
Oh, okay, they're doing, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, going on Mepachi. So now when we get to the section on senseless speech or gossip, we find that there have to be four aspects, as with all of the other activities, in order for a complete path of action to be completed, or for a path of action to be completed relating to senseless speech or gossip. So when we look at these four bases, we find that we begin first with the basis of senseless speech is that it is a topic that is not meaningful. Sometimes that can be translated as important, but the word meaningful is the most accurate translation of it. And last week we went over it slightly. I didn't get to go into the perfection of wisdom teachings in order to retrieve it. I looked for a short amount of time and didn't get the information, so I have to come back to it again, unfortunately, because I couldn't find it in the Abhisama Alamkara. But here, something without meaning, we find a classification of various categories of 9, things with meaning and not with meaning, in the perfection of wisdom teachings. And we find that mostly we're talking about the non-Buddhist assertions, and then there are various examples, such as the offerings that are made, such as blood and flesh to gods and so forth. These are not meaningful. So they give various examples of things that aren't meaningful, but mostly Rinpoche said they're speaking of non-Buddhist tenet systems in this case, and then other things that don't have meaning, which we'll get into. But Rinpoche said one of the main bases is the non-Buddhist assertions and their beliefs and so forth. So just talking about them. And last week Rinpoche said because they're not valid cognition, they're not valid. And that's why it becomes not meaningful. So I'm going to table any of the extra information that I'm not going to get exactly accurate right now, again, because I just don't want to give an inaccurate presentation, because Rinpoche would never give an inaccurate presentation, so his translator shouldn't. So I will table there's a few details in there around what is meaningful and not meaningful that we will look into. And then when we get to the second category of attitude, we find that there are the 3 points of attitude: the perception, the motivation, and then the affliction. So first, the perception is to have the thought to speak of something and then speak of something that doesn't have meaning. So this is the actual perception. One is having this thought to speak of something unmeaningful, and then actually speak something that isn't meaningful, or a looser way, that isn't important. So this is the first point of perception. And then the next point is the actual motivation. or the desire to make an arbitrary remark, or to make an unconnected remark that doesn't really mean anything. So that's the motivation. And when we look at the actual perception, it doesn't there doesn't have to be an object of our perception that we are gossiping to. So that when we look at the actual first part of this, where we're perceiving it, and then we have this motivation and so forth, and then we actually complete this deed where we engage in this performance, which is the next step we're about to get into, there doesn't have to be an object to which we're performing. So that's part of the perception category, is that we're perceiving that we're going to say something that doesn't have meaning, but there's not an object that we have to be perceiving in order to then follow it through, in order for a complete path of action to be complete. So we could be saying it to a tree. It wouldn't matter. There doesn't have to be a basis of an individual there to receive that information. So then the performance itself is saying something that is not meaningful or not connected. So that's the actual performance, is saying it. And then the completion, Rinpoche didn't get into because he said there's a long section there.
Tatu ne ngaji mensing boss ngaji de she sa zuna and ngaji tatu to res je samba jo tatu ngaji mensing boss mensing but ne ngaji tatu res ma tatu ne ngaji mensing boss te yang je du dans temba des tatu de la du yoris du marbe
and the tatu de je dun quand il s'est je joa de je samba joa de
ta ngaji tatu de ngaji mensing but tatu des jang je de la ngwa dans yewa dans je bon sa ji son de ta jang je be ngwa se de ta ngaji ba mensing ba wo so de ngaji ba mensing ba chu je ngaji tatu ngwa ai mensing ba do des ngwa se do
leso
ngaji ba mensing ba se de jaji ge ngwa se do de ngaji tatu ngwa se de ngaji ba mensing ba de ngaji tatu re ngaji tatu ngwa res ngwa de ro ta tamu ngwa se de je ngaji tatu ngwa de la ngwa te yang je du dans de tala ina kazi na du yoris je du dans de bazo de te yang je du dans de te sa ngaji tatu ngwa de la pa shigi na du yoris iwa se to de jaji bi du sin da jaji bi de ban sib du ane pent da shamen ba da tu no do de kat jaji bi sen do shamen ba da to no le de jaji ge do ba na je de sha yin je kasi bu mu do
okay de dun tatu ewa dun je ewa dun
tatu de la du
okay
ngaji tatu de la du
quand il s'est indiqué de je dun dans drabodu de tambo je
te je du se de je du son du ngaji tatu de la du so marbe
okay
yeah.
So then when we get into the culmination or the completion, that's an actual completion, is that when one utters or says, completes saying the senseless speech or the gossip. So when this has been said, then there is completion. And then it goes on to say, furthermore, senseless speech has 7 bases. So I've been asking, what I was asking Rinpoche is the English seems like this means the first category. And it seems like now we're speaking the 7 categories of completion. So Rinpoche is saying that these 7 deal with completion. So these 7 categories are under the completion or culmination category, and it's not referring to then 7 categories of the first. So that's what I was trying to clarify. And this falls, Jamyang Sheba has the various divisions of the basis of the actual culmination, and then the divisions, and then Sumba Gare Jamyang Sheba? Ewa then Sumba?
Jajebe
Sumba?
ngachig tatu de la ngu ta ewas loro ngachig tatu ngu ta ngachig tatu le ewas le
Dene Sumba?
somba zobum
Zobum don't
zoba
Oh, debate. And then the last is like a debate or dialogue in Jayan Sheba's categories. So this is going to be the actual basis of culmination, or if that's probably the best way to translate it. So we're going to go, Rinpoche said, now through the actual texts.
단장제 지나왔대 ngachig tatu ngu shosna ngachig ba phensin badres ngachig chebad phens lawsasuna
So if we were to say, what does Jayan Sheba say the actual culmination of senseless speech is, he would say the actual completion or the actual culmination is having finished an utterance of useless talk or having uttered useless speech. So this is what Jayan Sheba says is the actual culmination. And then the next category is divisions and then the debate or dialogue.
So
it says furthermore, and so these gossip has 7 bases.
Pensemba, and Lomba Napas Tavia, and Tautsaba, Lausemba Jungurbuta, and Pensembas, Tamutan, Sandruata, Churul Juntan, you are there's a Ngashi there, Marva. Junshi there, Sandru was a group. Sandru Semba. Sandru the Lausasuna. And then Taturina Marba. And then Zoba. And
Zoba?
And Tinkanto Zoba and then Loya the Ketan Jimobishiando.
Okay.
Marba.
Okay.
Tature.
Yene, the Chu Dasi Zobadan.
The Chu Zoba to the Yimarta, Zoba agenda.
Zoba agenda. Okay.
Then Jeba Mawasa on do. Jeba Mawatab Jeba Masondu doing Tamanda Marbe. Kuni Tubina, no Tubazuya. Jeba Mawatab.
NGK, the Ewa.
Oh.
Ale, Tama.
Yours and Jebas Jibade.
Ale, Ewa Ka Ale, gender.
Kuni get a Tubina,
Lesser.
And Kuni get a Mobishi now, no Kuni Kakachandro.
Lesser.
Ewa, Jebas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then these 7 bases are as follows. Speaking of fighting, fault-finding, disputes, and divisions. And one thing I missed before, Rinpoche, non-Buddhist, he also gave the example of talking about history and things of that nature, just in the last translation. So here, speaking of fighting, so this could be speaking of war, wars and so forth. So talking about the First World War, the Second World War, and so forth. So these are examples of speaking of fighting. So talking about various wars going on or fighting and so forth. So this is the first category. The second category is fault finding. This is finding fault in everything. Just spending time finding faults in someone and so forth. So this is what fault finding is referring to. Disputes, they chose not to use the word debate here, but it's actually the word for debate. So Rinpoche said any kind of debate or dispute, it's almost, I don't know, if the word dispute almost infers that there's something wrong, but it's more of debate. And then Rinpoche gave the example of lawyers and so forth who go back and forth. That is a dispute, but they're going back and forth with this opinion and that opinion. And then I asked, well then how do we differentiate? Because there's debate. This word is used for the word you use at Drepung when you debate. And Rinpoche said this is speaking of anything other than Dharma debate. So debating about things that aren't Dharma. So he said not a debate that is not Dharma. So I just wanted to, looking at that word, is really talking about debating, argument, going back and forth debating in a non-religious way. And divisions here, divisions is referring to dividing people. Here it almost looks like it's going to then tell us some divisions, and then because there's a semicolon, I think. But what divisions here is referring to is dividing people. It's almost like divisive speech. It's and I said they've used the word that you would use for how many divisions of this or that, and he said that's appropriate to do because that is also separating out people. You can use that word for dividing out people by saying something that makes them separate, that makes them divide. So that's what the meaning of this last category is. Dixon. So we'll do. Less so. So this last category, Rinpoche is saying, is really what we spoke about during the divisive speech section, where it's talking about making beings who are compatible or are incompatible, either becoming incompatible or remaining incompatible. So that's what we decided. And we also realized that we can use various concordant, harmonious, and they actually use all of those words in the next 2 pages to translate Tumba. So when we were discussing a week or two ago about if we could use the word harmonious, they actually use the word harmonious on the next page for that same word. So that's the meaning of that. And that's the meaning then when we get into this divisions section of what the divisions is speaking of, dividing people, making those who are compatible, incompatible, those incompatible remaining incompatible. Diesel?
That don't know what je do not know Tamutan, Sanroatan, Jobatan, Jebamawas, doing on the Chirichi.
Okay, so this is the first among the 7. Speaking of fighting, fault finding, disputes, and divisions.
Tambuji.
Less so.
That Nibantere should be Tanju Sang, Transi, Sanga la Gayu, and Lu Lombobatan, Canon Shibasu dance, Canyon Shibasu. That Sheriff Tanjuji, and the Transi Sangas or the Transit, and Transit Kitchen, Tamba logo, Tamba logo, Tamba Batik, Tamba Batik, Riji Killing, Riji. Riji the Tambi Shijane, Riji Tumbare, Riji Karusumba Samaris. What the Sanga Kuzu Sanga Ju and Shuribitanju San Transi, Sanga la Gayu, Shuribitanju to the Gabaje, and the Lombo, Kanuje, what the Jena, Nachi is. Transi, Sanga to Kangalo, Gabajene, and the Lombo, Kanuje Baina, what the Nachi is. Gayi, Ulu Lombo Batan, Kanuje Basu dance, the Nibare.
The Parshin drop. So the second category is as follows. Speech such as transmitting and reciting texts with a mind that delights in the treatises of non-Buddhists or in the mantra vehicle of Brahmins. So here, this is speaking of those who follow Brahma. An example is of those who follow Brahma. And here is when you are reciting these non-Buddhist treatises and you like doing so you're delighting in it and you're reciting it, this becomes gossip or useless talk. So we find that there are the 4 texts that they believe are valid cognition. That is an example of what we could be speaking of reciting here. And these are not. So therefore they are considered gossip when we recite them. And I commented that this is similar to what Rinpoche is speaking of in the Perfection of Wisdom Teachings, and he said yes. So this is what we were referring to, those texts, those tenets, the recitation of those non-Buddhist tenets falls into that category. So that's number 2 among the 7.
Nandalu Tambuk Tato, the Rigi Samatan Geshe Mas, truly Chundubatan, Gaza, Debajun Tuanguzumba, Lombishirachi Tanga is what the Tamba to go with the Rigi, Bachat Samaris, El Karashi with Samaris, Laura, Petru, the Lombishirachi Taris, Rigi Samamari Laura.
The Lombishirap Sena?
Lombishirachi Ta. 렌다서 렌다서 share chibita.
Oh, okay.
Share junibita.
Oh, okay, the share. So
truly chinde about the Hindu marbe Hindu shu kangan treja no de debata somde. What the number share tares. Truly chinde about Geshe mas. La wonshu ge and the gazo versela de share chibitares. Then the debation should don't ngonzambas deba tabijeto and then mangatem about the sage about the Sonjakan Chumbalazuba, what to know what the Lumishero Sita is over.
the debts of the Lumishan da the Donda Kanga the Hakodu, de Sikh.
Shira Junior.
Okay, Shira Jun Yoba.
Shira Junior.
Okay. Faulty wisdom. Okay. So we find in the first chapter of Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika Karika, where he states that the texts that the Brahmins assert, the four texts that the Brahmins assert to be valid cognition are not, because there is a faulty wisdom present. So there is faulty wisdom present, and then there are various other examples of, for instance, those Hindus who believe that bathing in the Ganges River is a way in order to purify sins. So this would be another example of a faulty wisdom, a wisdom that is faulted, that is not valid. So even though it's asserted as valid cognition, that assertion that it's valid cognition is a faulty wisdom. So that's the point that Dharmakirti makes. And then other examples are that Shiva, for instance, created the whole world or the whole universe. And then there's also the group of people that have they have a trident, and they believe that by jumping on a trident, if it goes through them in a certain way, then this is liberation. So there's followers that believe that jumping on a spear is the way to become liberated. So this is another category of faulted wisdom. So these talking of all of these things would be considered gossip or senseless speech. These would all categorically be under that. So these tenets, these assertions that I'm speaking of, such as the trident, such as the Shiva, such as the washing of the water, these are all faulty and would be considered gossip.
What the Nibat, what the Sheriff Tenju San Transi, Sangala Gai, Lu Lumbobatan, Kanashibasu, Nibat.
So number 2 is speech such as transmitting and reciting texts with a mind that delights or finds joy in the treatises of non-Buddhists or in the tantric vehicle of Brahmins.
Tasomba de Nyatabi Mawate, and Nyatabi Mawa, Mega Tabo to Somba, Natabe Mawatanga to Amanda Shesuna, then Aman Shesons and Mun Kisha de Jumanbe. Amashesun, Amashebar, Baba Shesun, and Ching Mune, and also Kisha de Juro to see Samarbe.
The Ngu Dangeche, the guy.
No,
they're crying.
Nyatabi Mawat, Mengandova. Takarjego Pama Shesutanga, Nal the Rubicing Yomaris Chimoshida.
And then Ngu, the Chu.
Mangun shading.
Okay. So, third category is expressions of helplessness, such as wailing. So here, for instance, if your mother or father dies and you go on and on, I'm helpless now, I have nothing that I can do, my mother has died, how will I go on? And then it says such as wailing, in perhaps crying as one is doing it. Rinpoche said it could be not crying also. One could be saying all these things while not crying, but the word for crying, such as crying, the word wailing, maybe it's a better translation. I've always heard crying. Maybe it means the same exact thing. So here, this is really, first category of helplessness is just expressing this over and over. I'm lost, I've got nothing, nowhere to go, this sort of thing, and then such as wailing. So that's it.
Well, this somebody, Tajibandere, Gebatan, Sebatan, Gebatan, Sebatan, Gaur Shebatan, Gango Shebe Sheba Mawata. Tangasu Kamagan Johan Kamagan Sheda Jobarbe. Gabajin Geshe Lharampa to Jibare Jiba.
Joglan.
Jolhan and then also Gabajin Geshe Lharampa. What to say inside? Ancient country do.
Je. Kamagar. Je Yure. Ewa Je. The Kamagar, dan Simitsik, dan.
Nyatabat in the Roa. Sombat Ta Kamagabat Jibaro Shiba. Gebatan Sebatan, Gora Shebatan, Gangur, Chebo Mawasa. Nasu Kamaga Kishamoshi that you mother. What Jiba Shiba.
Then the Puik, the Jigare. The Injike Kamagar, Tambo, Nipa, Tsimitsik, Sumba.
Tasuk Chiri.
Dun cheek.
Dungunon Chi.
Ale.
Dungunon Tambute and then the Imba Tamudan, Zobat and Jebama Tambaje.
Lesso.
And then she will be 10 Jews on the Suluba nearby J. Nyata Menga Dobatabut, Somba J. Jibat, Gebatan, Zebatan, Gare Shebatan, Gangu Sheba.
Gar Sheba, Gangu Sheba?
Gangu Sheba Mama. No,
Gar
Chi.
Yeah, this song the cheek nang.
Geba Kamagadro.
Geba Kamagadro.
Sebas and just myself.
Tennessee. Then a Somba.
Gangur Shebata, Gangur Shebas.
Soccer dang grapple do it.
Chibu Jazu Maraveta. Chibu.
Something that entertains.
Gangur Gaura Sheba. Gabazuya Juro, Gabazuya.
Making
Gabazuya Gajasia to see but
Okay. Tuche.
then the Gangur Chibber Mawas. Gangur Chibatan, Gangur Chibber Mawa. Can lower the what did Chi?
Okay. So number 4. So we've gone through the first 3. The first 3, speaking of fighting, fault finding, disputes and divisions, number 1. Number 2, speech such as transmitting and reciting texts with a mind that delights in the treatises of non-Buddhists or in the mantra vehicle Brahmins. Number 3, expressions of helplessness such as wailing. And then number 4 is where we are. And number 4, there are those 4 points. The speaking of laughter, play, entertainment, and enjoying. So here, speaking of laughter, is speaking of things that are funny, that make one laugh, joking, and so forth. So this is what speaking of laughter is referring to. Second is playing around. So just playing in some way just playing around. Rinpoche's the word simitsik just means playing also. So the word playing around. Entertainment is seeking out something that brings you some kind of happiness that you participate in. So something that entertains you is entertainment. I try to get more dialogue on that, and it's just anything that you're entertained by. And then enjoyment is seeking out some kind of speaking of some sort of things in a way that make it enjoyable, to make it an enjoyable interaction. So saying things that make everyone around happy and make people, that Rinpoche said, make people happy, make people joyful by saying it. So it's almost like joking. This enjoyment is like saying words so that everybody enjoys what you're saying, and everybody enjoys the time. I don't know any other way to put it, but that's the point of enjoyment. It's trying to make everyone enjoy by the words that you're saying, and enjoy the words that you're saying.
What the Gebatan, Tsibatan, Gawar Shibatan, Gangur Jeba Mamas,
so that's number 4. Speaking of laughter, play, entertainment, or enjoyment.
Tangabatere, Jabutan Lombutan, Yutan, Kumbi Tan La Subi, Dunzing Tan Mamasa, Dunzing Tan Mahatangabatere. Ta Jabu Kesha Amaratane, and George Washington Sadatan, what
Hold on, let's go.
Jagosel Jabo Mushiado, what the Jero Maru, what Sukesha to say is that. What the Najigo Naljishi, Jabo dance,
history.
Then the Lumbo dance, and George Washington Lambo do Sumares, what the Momushia or Tena to swing said it. Tenaji, and then I was barely choosing when I was on that. What the Momushi, no Kisha do, what to see that is that. Jabot and Lumbo dance, you dance, Usana, the Asia Sandata, America Sandata, what the Kishamo Lomamushi, the mother, what the swings of Marbe. And the you dance, then the combi Talasoba, Coma, Lumbat and the Coma Movidas, Coma Chuku, Nama Coma Kuberta, Coma Kishamushi Rota.
Gomo Goken Getche, Goma Getche, Benjike Gomo Goken.
Kumbi dance the Coma Cocaine down with that. Coma Cocaine, Coma te Kubare, and then Del Coma Moviore, Chimomushi da Juro, what to say said.
Okay.
Kumbi Tanla Subi, Dozing Tamawas, and Dozing Tanta, Musu Momudu, the Kishamushi da Juro, to Suresa, the Napa thing said.
Then Tambo Dondagare. The Napa, the 1, 2. Then Ngapa the Tambo.
Jabutan, Jabusorota, Jabutan, George Washington's Kisha to Jaro. Lobutat and or the Noble Mushero.
Then a you, then Goma.
Usana Lobutan, Usana, Ishia Sandatan, Jaga Sandatan, what the Abaraka Sandata, Loba Mushia, whatever, what the swings of Marbe. Kumbi Tangla Sobasata, Coma, and the Tsutbal Coma Moviore, so what the Moshia Marbe, what the Kumakitam Moshia to do is that. Nala Subi, Dunzing Tam House, Dunzing Ta,
They don't agree.
don't this in the
They.
Doa since the Ruru Chaman Marbe, Dunzing Tam, Dunzing Tam. Those is a Momo Rujeba, what the Kisha to Marbe. Taka the Jabutan, what to say, Jabutan, Lumbutan, Yutan, Kumbutan, Dozitan, is at Dozitan.
So, the next category is talking about news of commotion, such as news of kings, ministers, nations, and thieves. So I was looking for more clarity on this word commotion, and then it's about groups of things. So I want to get more. I'm going to look at the Tibetan and then look at I have to do all of that, which will take me a moment. But Rinpoche said commotion. What is the news about commotion? And then it is these 4 things. So commotion is whatever word, they're using the word commotion for a reason, but commotion is referring to things such as news of kings, ministers, nations, and thieves. So the point here, talking about history. In history, we've had many different kings and ministers and so forth, so such as George Washington, who was the leader of the United States. So talking about history, talking about things about kings of past, or about the presidents and so forth. So this would be this first category. The second category is nations. So talking about Asia and what's going on in Asia and what's going on in Europe and so forth. So talking about all of these different places. So this is what nations is referring to. And thieves is talking about people who you think are stealing things or who are have thief-like qualities and speaking of them, saying, oh, this person's a thief and they did this and so forth. So this is what this word thieves is speaking of. It's speaking of those who are stealers, those who steal and speaking of them. I'm not sure, just as a translator's note, I don't know if that's at a nation level or at a small... it doesn't matter if it's a large type of a thief who's stealing large things or something very small. It's talking of thieves in general. So we'll take a short break and give out stuff, and we'll be right back. So now we're back to the 7 aspects or basis of completion here.
다 담부 뒤는 담부 담부 당 상조와 당 저바 당 제바마 담부제
Less so.
니바 시르비 텐주상 당지 상한라 가유 롱보바 당 간원시와 수다 니바제 냐다바 마와테 팽아 타보스 송바제 되는 게바다 세바다 가르시바다 강구르 쉐바 마와스
Less so.
지바제 자부다 람부다 유다 컴비탄라 소비 deuxième mawas hot ngabache ta trobandere do troba yeah.
I think goings on could be commotion too, I think. That's another lighter way I think we can translate it. Goings on. All right, so number 1. So when we get to the 7 bases of this completion or culmination, we begin with the ones we've gone over already. So the first one, speaking of fighting, finding faults, fault finding, disputes and divisions. So that's number 1. Number 2, speech such as transmitting and reciting texts with a mind that delights in treatises of non-Buddhists or in the mantra vehicle of Brahmins. Number 3, expressions of helplessness such as wailing. Number 4, speaking of laughter, play, entertainment, or enjoyment. Number 5, talking about news of commotion such as news of kings, ministers, nations, and thieves. And now we're on number 6.
Ta drobateredo rarowa da hyamba tabu mawa ta nga to kecha tane chang raze kecha she de nam ta hyamba kecha she de nam o chi she de o to ngol nga che de sa rarowa tas
The raze gecha she the aradan chang yin gu raze dang drapo.
rarowa sana chang zu gen de marbe
Okay.
chang zu
Okay,
gen
yin
kecha
gu.
she yoro
Okay.
ane hyamba tabus rarowa ta hyamba tabus on du what the nyumbi kecha re raze kecha she go maruda kecha churun kecha she ade chang zu gen kecha ramudu churun kecha she ade hyamba kecha ramudu nga su she de jo
Like gecha drapo.
o de nga che de sa da
Then the raze the ara yin magu. Raze dang drapo.
raze kecha lagu
Okay.
churun kecha de raze kecha ramudu
Okay.
hyamba kecha ramudu
Okay.
what the hyamba tabu she de jo what the nga che de so
Less so. Number 6, speaking like a drunkard or a lunatic. So here, speaking like a drunkard doesn't mean that one is necessarily drunk, or it means that one is talking like someone who is intoxicated on alcohol. So here, that's why it is like a drunkard. So that was the clarification I made, that there does not have to be alcohol involved in order for this to take place. You could be acting like someone who is drunk, speaking like someone who is drunk. And then a lunatic. So this is someone who is crazy or mentally ill, speaking out like someone who is mentally ill. The nyumba is really crazy. So speaking like someone who is crazy. So speaking like someone who is drunk or speaking like someone who is crazy.
다 로치 계셔야 도데 듬바들이 듬바 로비 좋아 나 가사다 쇼롱다 네베 좋아 터지지 어디 기자 먹으셔야 말বে 로치 계셔야 도데 좋아 계셔다는 규여봐 차비용 계셔야 되는 말বে 어디 로치 대해서
The dumba,
듬바든데
the losonga.
로비 좀 해보고서 로비 좋아 계셔야 요로 어디 해봐대 어디 듬바들에서다 듬바들에 다 주로서 어디 다저고는 다저마도 레벨 시브롬도 와서 어디 다다지 듬사데 다저자주다 아니 제마 다주주
Okay. And then number 7 is to talk of one who maintains a wrong livelihood. So here this is speaking of someone who lives in a wrong way. Then the nga, the puma nga, the digsun. So speaking of someone who, Rinpoche said that the commentary on this isn't very clear in this section, so we're going to get back to it. So we'll end with that, number 7, the talk of one who maintains a wrong livelihood.
what the Nazi Jajibit in the Dash of Naji Madonna Tene, Gino Le Jingaremundo, G down the Pichichanga.
Huh.
One of my Tamanalula, Taman and Sandro, Jingaji.
Oh, okay.
What to look down at the Jujangaremundo, Nashi Marvata, Jajibu Kebachibure, and the Kumo the John the Jeremy Dun said there is.
Less so.
Jaji with the Yabudu, the Tajan Jajana, and know what the Jima was Jaji and do then the Sukan do the do.
Okay.
Siburam do the Jaji Dabudu.
Then Chishin and Natsu. Okay. So here, when we look at Shamar Pandita's text in this section, we don't find it that there is points that are made in it, but we don't find the clarity that we find in Jayan Sheba's text. So we're going to go to Jayan Sheba's text to explain this section, and we find that although in this particular section of the 7 divisions, Lama Tsong-kha-pa has enumerated as 7. If we look into the numbers, there are actually 10, 15, when we start to enumerate how many there are actually in here. Fighting, fault finding, disputes, divisions. There's 4 already. So it's not finding any fault in the 7-point presentation. It's saying that within those 7 points there are more divisions. So we'll get to those points later that Jayan Sheba makes.
But if
we were to say posit those 7, Jayan Sheba would state these are the 7. In the Tibetan.
Chusam Madeba, Tunda Madeba, Pawane, Nashi Mandeba, Pune, Numuba Tumbata, Jengitan, Lula Subata, Duga Kenla, Subala, Taituna, Pebos, that in the Majaji, Jermaji with the Tamagi, Nachigo with the Sek, the Hijad Castle down the Marva. Tamal Nachi to Sukangalo, and Geomebaris, Keshanghazil Geomaris, Chudom Madebaris, Kungachi is not Debaro, Chuying Marbuta, Chudom Madebaris, Tunda Madeba, Tunda Yomaris, Nachi to Tunda Madeba Hawanes.
Then they Kamagana, they Ja, Nache in, Gangisina Dunda Meba, ha 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 ha, they Nache in.
Tangasu what did Go my Nachi in Zerota, Ingrid.
Okay.
Hawanes and Hashi Mandeba dansa. Hashi Mandeba, the Kunin Mutumba, Numubatumba,
Then
Jengi dance. What did that Germaji what the Nachi changed to Jadamar?
less so.
Jengi Tumba, the Kemishuak in Jola to Marbe. Jengi dan. Lula Suba, the Jetan Singaman,
Less so.
Lula Suba Tansa, Duga Kela Suba, La Taitunas, and then also sing Duga Debituna, Pemba, Duga Ukijeta, Kebandu, Chapi or Goat and the Shady Ajuro, the Susan de Inside.
Yine, Natsu, the Dana, that's a Gacha shit. Gacha shit. The Tama. Natsu the Sheiken Dana, the Shenye.
Taman Tangachi, Dunjasaro, Nachi Dun.
Less so.
What Sugan Nachi, the Sul Sing Hashel Joy Mare, Chutam Madembare, Tonto Mademba, Jirma, Sun Marbe.
So then, now we've already gone through the 7 divisions, and then J. Rinpoche adds more points here to clarify anything and just to add anything necessary. So disjointed, irreligious, and senseless speech is speech that is jumbled, reveals the afflictions, or is uttered while laughing, singing, or viewing actors and the like. So here, this has unconnected speech. So senseless speech is speech that isn't connected, that doesn't have any meaning whatsoever, and then it reveals our negative afflictions as we are saying them. Because usually when we look at these other categories of laughing, singing, or viewing actors and so forth, we're speaking out of attachment or things that we're attached to. So it's motivated by these negative afflictions. So when we look at or uttered while laughing, singing, or viewing actors and the like, we're generally uttering things out of our afflictions. So this is why it's stating that these are senseless speech or gossip. And then I asked Rinpoche if the actual sound of laughing is gossip because it doesn't mean anything. And Rinpoche said, yes, the sound of laughing itself would be considered gossip in the case because you're uttering something that has no meaning. Less so. Less so. So then when we look at Jayan Sheba's commentary, we find that it breaks down into the actual culmination, which is having finished or an utterance of senseless speech. So finishing saying something that is senseless speech is the actual culmination. Then when we look at the divisions of basis, Jamyang Sheba says there are 7, as the Lamrim Chenmo points out, these 7 basises. And now we get into the debate part. So that's the last section of Jamyang Sheba's category. So we have first the actual culmination, the second the basis of division, the divisions, and then we have the 7 basises, and then we get into the debate. So now this next part will deal with what Jamyang Sheba says is the section of debate in the culmination, the 3 divisions of the culmination. Less so. Less so. Less so.
Ndene hamada timbo sonsos na jun chama chitu ngachi sombote ngachi yimbate
Rinpoche Kela.
Rinpoche wote ta jun chama chitu ngachi sombote ngachi yisongen chita mai songen ta pacha mungwe yiro ta ta Rinpoche ke jun chama chitu ngachi sombote ngachi yisongen de is
Less so. Less so. So here's the section where a doubt arises. So we have a debate, the section of debate. It says there are 2 systems with regard to the 3 first vocal faults. One asserts that they are senseless speech and one that they are not. However, what I've stated here is in line with the former. So here, J. Rinpoche is stating that there are 2 thoughts according to these 4 non-virtues of the speech. There's I don't want to say the word lineage, but I'm going to use it just in a loose way. There's a lineage that feels that the first 3 non-virtues of the speech, lying, divisive speech, and offensive speech, are gossip. And then there's another, I'll call system. There's another system that feels that these things, lying, divisive speech, and offensive speech, are not gossip. Lama Tsong-kha-pa follows that they are. So Lama Tsong-kha-pa states that he is following the system that says that the 3, lying, divisive speech, and offensive speech, are all gossip. So he's just positing that there are other systems that state that they are not. He's following the system that states that they are. And this is the debate section. Or objection. Okay, chu. Doubt. Yeah. Less so. So when we look at these categories of Jamyang Sheba's text, when we look at the culmination section, we find the three divisions: basis, and then divisions, and then the debate. So this falls into the debate, or doubts. The word is doubt is in there, but it's also debate. It's looking at doubts. Maybe, looking at doubts, looking at doubts. So here, Geshe Rinpoche is saying that there are two systems when we look at these points. One system that says that the first three, lying, harsh words, and divisive speech, are certainly gossip or useless talk, or senseless talk, and the other system that states that they are not. So Geshe Rinpoche is following the first system.
Lomon kana chau tabo. Burn juju to trabi.
Burn.
Chito dan. Haji yegon. Hashanki. Sensi damba tabo. Luba dansa.
Hashan bondang.
Tashiru. Taniba de loate. Shaman burn the Tasudua. Shiru bijong ansondu.
Less so.
Lomon Kana Tasonse, Logabu, the Zundu Lure. Lomon Kana Tason, what to raise that. Lomon Kana Tason down, Chau, Tapen, Otosuka Pumbo, Yimbade. Perne, je do the Trabi, Titodons. Pambus Pusha no ruler, you do the Trabi, Tanaso, Tibajiagi, what in the Pushat and the Menroa. The Suez is that Nenhaji again. Nenhaji was that Tuja to Marbe. Tuja again, the Suez is that Hashanki Sensi Damba, Tabo Luba dance, Hashanki, Jakam Hashanki, Gunja, Pusha, what the Sulu know what the Nachi is. Nyata na jim hengan dun ba tabuza nyata binga ma sa de ndo lemu ta sa ga zi dang gangur je bi dang dang zhen da bu do za jabu yu su ma dang komo la su bi dang dang ra ro wa de hyun bi dang la lemu ta sa ne kasa shu long su lo bi chu ma wa de je dun son sos de tabudo de manda jebudo
ne nipa de lubum gari lub de bon hashan de
lomo kana taso
de gari
becha no le zondu se tan no le becha kha mom du de jure pe ji yere zondu se de o de no lo da jiden basel pya ke mom de yere da lomo kana taso no ba ina lo tu so ga no we lo
Lo naga.
Nga zo tukale dashaya dan santa to bambu gi mar bambu. Pe to ke ka sha, pe ma to ke ka ma ka tri ro da.
So in Shamar Pandita, we find very similar expression that we're finding right here in the Lamrim Chenmo. So we find the first category of speaking of fighting, fault-finding, disputes, and dividing to be very similar to Shamar Pandita's points. The next points, a speech such as transmitting and reciting texts, with a mind that delights in the treatise of non-Buddhists, here, or in the mantra vehicles of Brahman, Shamar Pandita breaks it down into various examples or categories, such as the non-Buddhists' tenets, as mentioned here in the non-Buddhist systems, the ancient systems, such as Brahmins and so forth, but then goes on to speak also of systems such as the Hashan view, that it entered into Tibet that some were followers of, and also the Bon tradition. Those points in the Bon tradition that are not compatible would be considered this. And then also expressions of the Nagas. Rinpoche said that there's points that are made, and I'm not clear 100% on this, but it's expressions of the Nagas, and it's a text about worldly things, beneficial worldly things. And we can look further into this. So this would be a category of something that would be considered useless talk or gossip. And then also things such as black magic and so forth. So these were more examples that Shamar Pandita gives in his text that we don't find here. So these are some examples. And then the rest of it, we find the same points made. Expressions of helplessness, speaking of laughter, play, entertainment, enjoyment. And then he talks about talking about the goings-on, such as the things about kings and ministers and things that are going on, and then goes into speaking like someone who is drunk or crazy, and then the last one about the talking about one who maintains a wrong livelihood. So Shamar Pandita has very similar points to here, but we find some extra examples that are worthwhile and helpful in our investigation.
난도 라장은 희진도 가 멈추송도 또 장가다도 가 난도 라장은 어디 못 가도도 희진도 가 멈추송도 다
less so.
송도 장가도도 저 가도
So in Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand, you find a very large amount of examples and points that are made, but you never see the 7. You don't see where the relation to these 7 specific things in there. So you see a lot of information, but you don't find the dun yomare. So to find the count or where this enumeration or the way we're doing it with Jamin Sheba is difficult if we use the liberation, because there's many examples, but we don't find the 7 specific. But the liberation in the palm of your hand has so many things that are beneficial for our mind. Drew Dun. 7,000. Okay. Then the Yanjir Detsurulang, the Tambo, the Drepong Danganden, the Nyamdu, the Dun.
Trabazan then Jishe Dajimude, Kesashin, Mamu Kesashi Tagashi, what the
So when we get together, when we look at previously, when all of the monasteries would get together, there would be 6,000 or 7,000 monks together, and we'd get together and talk. So we would say that we're going to gossip. So we would say that because we're just talking, we would say that we are all a group of us engaging in useless talk. So we would say this when we would get together because we were all just talking.
Less
so. So now we finish those 4 and we arrive at the 3 of the mind, the 4 of the speech, and now we've arrived at the 3 of the mind. So the 3 negativities of the mind are covetousness, a harmful intent or malice, and then wrong views. So now we're currently dealing with covetousness. Less so. Okay. So first, when we look at covetousness, like all of the other 10, we need to have the 4 aspects present. So we have to have the basis, attitude, performance, and completion present in order for there to be a complete path action relating to covetousness as well. So the first, the basis of covetousness are the wealth or possessions of another. So wanting the items that someone has or the house that someone has, this is the basis of covetousness, this wanting of the wealth, wanting of things.
Ta nasa jisamba la son len dushi nyumo kulon son tamarbe ta dom dushi teres dushi ne jitalate doshi ba wosa ane jenji no la jenji no yema doshi jenji yuji la jenji yuji doshibate ne dushitres dushi ne jitala ten doshiba osa jita jenji no da yuji de marbe jenji no da yuji la jenji no da yuji doshibate doshires jitala ten doshiba nyomo ne somu karon ta nyom de cha wong na se jiba yujire ta ne konjo wong na se jiba yujire ne tumo na se jiba somo yujiro somu karon resta
Lesso.
sunga cham chaba de yujmaru
Lesso.
ta kolon ne dagar shawa de ba hosa kolon ne jenji yuji ta ta su ngalo dab jag de ba resta ta dagar shawa de ba hos Joan Sambi Tentala Toasheba Joan Tata Nejenji Nundan Yuji Tuzungalo Toya Gitane Wote Lekajia de Jirota Marbe
Lesso.
Joan Sambi Tente Jenji Nuntala Jenji Nundan Longete Toasheba Osa Toasheba Susum Toyage Kesha Chenrezig de yo chomba ta ne da ge shawa nge ba o da ge shawa nge ba o sa ta tu do de jenji ne ta yuji tu da ge shawa nge ba son jas son de sa ne la so ba da ge chuji ba ne la so ba ta jenji ne ta chala tu su ngalo ngai daga juji mano jabo madabe jabo
Sheda gu.
nale mano jabo na
Okay, mono. Aspiration.
daga juji nyabo usa
Prayer. Okay. So here we begin with the basis. So we look at the four basis: attitude, performance, and culmination. We begin with the basis of covetousness, or the wealth or possessions of another. So the things that someone else has. Of the three aspects of attitude, the perception is perceiving the basis to be what it is, perceiving it to be the wealth or possession of another. So this is the perception. You're perceiving that it is someone else's thing. And then the affliction is any among the three. So the affliction is coveting something out of desire, coveting something out of anger, coveting something out of delusion. And then the motivation is the desire to make the property or wealth your own. So wanting to make it your own. So one is motivated to have it as their own. The performance is striving at that completed purpose. The culmination is thinking, may it become mine, about the wealth and the like. So this culmination is like an aspirational prayer. May it become mine. So Rinpoche used the word the word that is used for prayer or for aspiration to explain what this "may it become mine" it means. So it's like this aspiration, this wanting, this wishing that this property of someone else's can become your own property. So this is covetousness. And this is the complete, how it is completed. This is the culmination. Once one thinks, may it become mine, about wealth and the like.
다 나세도 조바 제발을 중앙 상고 그래서 중앙 원도준 중앙 상고
they told me. That's so.
중앙 상고 대해서 중앙 조서나 나세 뭐지도 제발라 중앙 상고 그래서 중앙 마서나 나세 뭐지 제가 말했어.
That's so.
너서 마주 봤어.
That's so.
너서방에 대지요 big mind this.
Could you hand Rinpoche his bag, Lech? Thank you. It's there's a text in there, Rinpoche. Or not, it'll be easier for me. Bechagare, Rinpoche. Ngay the Sheda Gu.
Kali
Kali Kapi. So Rinpoche has the Jamyang Sheba notes, text.
나세 그 다투들라 나생 그 다투들라 너 템바다 주비체 마주바스 사지 숨지도 장시베
Do Demba, Matsupi say, then the Donagare, Do Demba.
너 템바 도두지리 시바도 말이야
Demba, Ni, Demba.
너 템바 안에 너 템바선 도두지리 시바도
Okay.
도두지리 시바 마제바 시바
Then Do Demba?
너 템바다 담부지 너 템바다 담부지
Then
Tene nipatil zubi tses. Nasen ngoji di jeba la kar gogoris na chunga tsang gogoris. Chunga tsang na nasen ngoji di jegare. Chunga ma tsang na nasen ngoji di jegamare. Nasen zuba jegamare da. Te nipa.
Then
Watil chunga tsang bada gogodwa.
Then Somba?
Somba da ma zubi tse.
Zobadang.
Zuba da ma zuba saji sung jegadwa.
Somba Donagare.
Somba tere.
Zobit.
Somba mazuba se mazuba.
Mazupa Don Sena?
Nasen jeba la je samba juwa tatu je tsanguro. Juwa tatu je matsana nasen ngoji jega maro. Chunga tsana nasen ngoji jegare.
Then Nipa.
Zuba yungores. Chunga da matsana zuba mares. Zuba jega mare. Ngoji yungmares. Ten jabu do.
Then Tambo Dudushe, Nipa. Then Nga Yingu. Then Somba.
Somba zubi tsere. Nga nipa zubi tsere. Somba de mazuba se, mazuba. Waten jaje wote kali lari chum leon ta.
So the Jamyang Sheba breaks this section down into three categories. Rinpoche said we'll get through them. I was trying to get clarification on the meaning of each of the three, and Rinpoche said we'll go through them. So the first one is the abbreviation of the meaning of covetousness. The abbreviation of this culmination. So it says, Asanga describes this as a determination that it will become yours. For this to be a full-fledged covetousness, 5 qualities are required. So first, we have the abbreviated meaning, or the abbreviation, Jamyang Sheba says. And then the second part is what is actually needed. And then the third is if these aren't present, then there's not actual covetousness. So it's the first is what's actually needed, and then the last section is if these aren't there, then it's not. So these are so that's the correct, because I see it down here. So that's the correct third category. So we begin with abbreviation. Bene? Tambo?
O ta dela nasen la suba. She sun te sa ne la suba tada. Te daga juji nyamba hos. Tatu ndo ten do temeno. Tatu daga shawa ngeba. She sun te ote basha doana sangata ba jere. She sun te ne la suba daga juji nyamba hos. Ne la suba daga juji nyamba. Nala juba daga juji nyamba de wote no temba tingsare. Tate nala juba daga juba tat nasen ngoji du yongala kaze sango chunga sango res. Chunga sana nasen ngoji juba chegre. Chunga ma sana nasen juba chegma.
Lasso.
Wote lede.
Selbudu tuche. So when we look at the text, it says Asanga describes this as the determination that it will become yours. So when we look at culmination and the actual completion, we first look at the abbreviated, and that's what Asanga says, that it is the determination that it will become yours. And then we get into the fuller explanation of what the actually has to be there for full-fledged covetousness, and there are 5 qualities. And then the last section, so that's the actual, what actually has to, how an actual covetousness takes place, what are the things have to be present, and then it says 5, and then the last category you'll deal with, if they aren't present, then there isn't a covetousness. So the first, now we'll get into that the section of the 5. So it's not easy for there to be a full-fledged consciousness, because there have to be 5 qualities in order for it to be the case. Okay.
Zambala soba yonsu toji Zambala soba yonsu toji Ronyawa shebe Shebe senta de basa Jeji nala soba tanga so chon dora chon Magit marbe Magit dosen do dine nga so chala to mi ten dogro o ta tangal go no nyabe o tana me so de
Okay.
Nala soba Zambula yonsu to jeans and tron do jala sosun de bayo battle tagro da to jin ronya ba shebe chubi santa de veji do jan menwa. Somba je da jeba dag kayba Dagi kayba dagar juji nyaba kuy senta de bas yalla jenda kayba jenda jala kayba te ane ngai ngal gugundu nyabe dag juji nyabe kuy senta de bas.
Okay. Lesso.
Jibarbe.
Lesso tuche.
Tangaba de nase te Moza Magis. Nasa de Moza Maris.
Lesso.
Jensen and Moza Magi. Niemi le Gaban Joa.
Lesso.
Meshibi. No, what the Moza Yoba to Sajin and the Sinu Santa Dembas. Demba allowed the Jerba.
The Ngapa. Ngapa.
Then what not sounds one nothing chigres. Send up Garo, Matana, send up Garutana, nothing was chigre, nothing Zuba chigre, not send up Matana, Zuba chigmares, Mojigman. What is one is that?
Lesso. Then there, Jewa Giant Sheba Sumba. There.
Jaji that did all the neighbor to Marva.
So then, so the 5 qualities are as follows. So if we were to say show or posit these 5 qualities that a Sangha describes, they're as follows. So Rinpoche said it was in the Compendium of Determinations, Doa. So here it says, having a mind that is exceedingly attached to your own resources is the first. Second is having a mind of attachment that wants to accumulate resources, accumulate enjoyments. Number 3, having a mind of longing due to comprehending or experiencing the good things of others, their wealth and so forth. So Rinpoche said, for instance, seeing people who have things that you really want, items that you really want. And sometimes if you go to the market, you see things that people are getting and you really want those things that they have, or you see the things that people have when you go out and you want those things. So this is what this is meant. Comprehending or experiencing the good things of others. So seeing the good things of others, their wealth and so forth. Having an envious mind, thinking that whatever's is another's should be your own. So envying what others have, and then thinking that what you are envious of you should have. So this is the fourth category. And then the fifth is having a mind that is overcome due to covetousness by shamelessness and an obliviousness about the determination to be free from the faults of covetousness. So you have this mind that's overcome by covetousness. You have no shame whatsoever about it and don't see any reason not to be covetous. So this is the fifth category. And then it goes on to say, if any one of these... I'm sorry, one second. For if any one of these five minds is not present, there is no actual covetousness. The levels of yogic deeds says to apply these five to all 10 non-virtues. Digsun. So those are the five. Oh, let me wait till we get to it and when Rinpoche repeats it, but I think that the third category of the Jamyan Sheba is how it is not full-fledged. But instead of if the five aren't present, there was a negative in there, and I took it as the five not present, but it's not full-fledged, I think. But let's wait and see when we get to it. Less so.
Less so.
Less so. Less so. Then Nipa. Okay. Then a Sumba, the
Rangi, Chunga Tongu Desa, Rangulonshula, Labar Chabi, Santa Debas, Susu Jalal and the Chayu Gudua. Nasan to Mosh Jibala, Susu Jalal and the Chayuba.
Less so.
Jeji. Longshu Suba Debi, Kanchak Santa Deba, Jala Momo Gudnabi, what the Chayu can go is, Nibajerwa, Jeji Nunla, Suba, Zambula Yonsu Tuji, Runya Jebi, Shubi Santa Deba. Taji Jala Butabu, Nangasul, Nasu Nala to go to Gun somebody on the Shajon Marida.
Less so.
Santa Dembas. That turn the Jiba the Nasan Mota Meba.
Bingapa.
Mota Meji, Niemi Ligaba Jua, Meshebesa. Sejin Santa Dembas, what the Imbare. Tebalas would to Sejin or that sang Abu the Karun, Masana, sang Abu Karun, Tana. Nasa Zuba Chigre, Moji Chigre, sang up to Masana, Nasa Zuba Chigre, Zuba Chigmares.
Less so.
What is a marbe? Nasa Mazuso.
The Ewa, the Nipa. Okay.
Taju, Toju, Sergeant Ojual, Toju. Tamal Jo Toju.
Sumba.
You Toju things are da, Mago Juro. Mago Jutala J, Samba Joa Tatu, Kangali Joa, Songo Joa. Jimaga Jukala Joayo Ares. You to join the Magawa Jukala, Nanju should be Sale, Joason sauce, Nanju should be Sangake, Nanju should be Saiko, Magawa Jukala, Joason Yoris, Je Samba Joa, Son Yoris. What do you think? Khalil, yeah.
So then it says the levels of yogic deeds says to apply these five to all 10 non-virtues. So here, this is the Asanga's text, the level of yogic deeds. It says that one is to apply all of these five requirements or qualities to all 10 non-virtues. It says, as for the manner in which an action might constitute covetousness that is not full-fledged, is such covetousness when you give rise to the following desires. So here, we've gone over then the basis of covetousness, which is the wealth or possession of another, and then the attitude, and then the performance, and then now the culmination. And when we look at the actual culmination, we find in the abbreviated sense that it is the determination that something will become yours. And then when we look at the points that are made, actually what is needed, and if it is not present, it is not covetousness. We find these five qualities. And then it says, having a mind that is exceedingly attached to your own resources. So first being attached to what you have, and then secondly, having a mind that wants to accumulate things. So one is attached to what one has, and then has a mind that wants to accumulate things, and then has a longing due to seeing other or experiencing the good things of others. So one longs for, wants to have their wealth and so forth, wants to have others' things. And then fourth, having an envious mind and thinking whatever someone else should have, whatever you're envious of, you should have. And then the fifth category, having a mind that is overcome due to covetousness by not having shame and being oblivious to the fact that you should be free from covetousness. So these are the 5 points that are made within that category. And if any of the 5 are present, there's no actual covetousness. So then the next point we're going to get into is how the level of yogic deeds, that the level of yogic deeds says to apply these 5 to all the 10 non-virtues, and then it's going to show how action that seems like covetousness could not be a full-fledged covetousness. So we'll get into that during the next class, yeah, that'll be what we're doing. So we're going to end here. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer to Chenmo Rinpoche. And then there's also the Dalai Lama's teachings. If one is able to listen to them, it's very good to listen to them. So the Lamrim, we find the points from the liberation of the palm of your hand, but we really can understand then the Lamrim Chenmo, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So the Lamrim Chenmo, the text is so solid, so important, so full. It's a little difficult, but if you go through it in this manner and practice it, it becomes very understandable. It looks like so many center members have become scholars. It's very good. So, concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy the pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denonang.